Good morning, y'all. Before we start our worship service, we have some announcements for you. Right, Mike? First of all, tomorrow, February 13th, our Climate Action Group is meeting. You know, these folks are busier than ever. And if you join, you get a ton of emails and you stay on top of all of the issues that, hey, whatever. But you're on top of the issues, and believe me, if we don't save our Earth, what's the point of anything else? Second announcement, you are all invited on Earth Day, April 22nd. Now, I'm giving you plenty of notice, so put it in your diaries. April 22nd from 4 to 8, we are going to be down to earth at the UUCLC. That's our annual spring auction, and I hope that many of you will get involved with donations. We have bright green, can't miss them, they're in the lobby, for donations of biddable events, services, gift certificates, other items. And this year, Lynn has put that form online for us who are technologically savvy and can do it all on the computer. Either way you want to donate, we'll take it. So get involved, thank you, and later on we'll be asking for some volunteers to help make that day a success. Coming up on February 25th, when Reverend Sycophus is with us, we have Covenant Group Leader Training. Some of you may not know, we have very vibrant and some well-established covenant groups within our congregation, but we're always open to having more. So whether you are an experienced leader or would like to step into that role, please consider joining us on February 25th from 9 to noon in the library for some training on covenant groups and how to lead them. The rest of our announcements, as you can see from the back of your order of service, have to do with coming events this week. Thursday will be our Death Cafe with Brooks in the library. The Dining Out group is meeting on Friday. Oh, food is my life, I tell you. Anyway, and then next Sunday, come one, come all, again, back to the auction. We are having training for those of you who might be a little hesitant, a little shy about contacting businesses about soliciting donations for our auction. I did it last year. I'm not the pro that Hale is. Hale and Charlie are going to do a brief training after church to give you all some tips and a little confidence about how to approach that. So they're all on the back of your order of service, and I know you'll pay great attention. We'll start in a few moments. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome. Let's sing some. Our gathering song is number 1008. When our heart is in a holy place, I invite you to rise and embody your spirit.
We
What a perfect way to kick off our celebration this morning here at the UUCLC, because Tuesday is Valentine's Day. I forgot to mention that in our announcements, so those of you who need to find something for your honey, you got 2 days of shopping. My name is Katie Fitzgerald. Rita Decker and I will be sharing service associate duties today. We're grateful to have the Reverend Gary Kowalski in the pulpit and as our service leader. This morning, Sarah Thomas, Rabbit Loring, and Diane Lee were your greeters. And handling the camera is Elwin Nunn, and Mike Yazko is our tech person today. We are all delighted to be with you and equally glad that you are here with us. Unitarian Universalism has no creed nor dogma. We are a covenant-based church. That means that we agree to live in relationship with each other according to the Unitarian Universalist principles and our congregation's covenant of right relations. We embrace diversity in all its forms. Everyone is welcome here. You can learn more about our church and check the events calendar at our website, uuchurchlc.org. Now, you've heard about who we are, and we would like to know who you are, especially if you are visiting us. I'm going to give the folks on Zoom a little warning that if you want to be introduced to the rest of the congregation, please turn on your mics and your cameras, and we'll get back to you in a moment. If we have visitors in the sanctuary, we'd like for you to rise in body or spirit and let us know. Wait till I get the microphone to you. Let us know who you are and where you're from. Do we have any visitors this morning?
Morning. I'm David Brown, and I'm visiting here from Stowe, Ohio.
All right, another Buckeye! Yes! I got so excited, sorry.
My name is Michael Brown from Santa Fe.
Yay, welcome, Michael.
Hi, I'm Diane Brown. I am also from Santa Fe, and we do have a son, David Brown.
I am Larry Cooperman. I'm from many places. I'm a tumbleweed man at this point. Since I retired from teaching college music, I've just been all over the United States, and especially since COVID, I felt it was pretty good to just isolate myself in nature. I raised my son at the UU Church of Fresno, which was the hub of progressive activity. And I'm in New Mexico. Actually, I'm in Silver City. Not right now, of course. And I'm doing a master's in education. I feel like adults are backed into their corners at this point in American history, North American history, I should say. And the only recoverable population would be young people at this point. They may redeem us.
Hopefully. Welcome. Glad you're with us today. Okay, coming around the bend.
Good morning. We're Robert and Jane Spear from Delafield, Wisconsin, which is near Milwaukee. Happy to be here. We're part of First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee.
Great. Welcome. We have anyone else in the sanctuary? How about out here? Okay. Mike, do we have anyone on Zoom? Okay, thank you. Well, again, we're glad you all could be with us. And we invite you to join us for coffee and conversation. It'll be down in the RE, outside the RE building under the portico. And we have some chairs outside to enjoy the glorious sunshine we have with us today. Folks that are with us on Zoom, just stay on this channel until around 11:30, because that's when Reverend Kowalski is going to have a talk back around today's topic of our covenant. And I think that's it for me. I yield to Kelly. Time for all ages. No? Oh, sorry. Pardon me.
A history of church, including yours. Some words from Sean Neil Barron. One day your church was born. Maybe it was a gathering of saints called for the worship of a wrathful God. Or maybe a few brave souls answered a notice in a newspaper, curiosity piqued by an announcement of a religion where free thinking and tolerance were bedrocks. No matter how it happened, your church was born, a gathering of people covenanted to be with one another through the journey of life and death and everything in between, and so it began. A faithful few, beautifully imperfect, called to the task of connecting and loving and serving. And they gathered for insightful sermons and rejuvenating music, a community whose fierce devotion to one another rivaled a mama bear's for her cubs. But it wasn't always like that. There were tough times, and I don't just mean Phyllis or Jack, those stubborn souls who inhabit the netherworld of committee meetings. No, I mean the really trying times when the church almost split in half over the war or integration, or when the mill left the town vacant, or when the minister crossed that line and nobody could speak about it for decades. But somehow you were still here, still on the town common, still the ones that showed up every time you were called, the church everyone recognizes, still using that communion silver till you voted to sell it. New people came. They changed things. Small things, big things, things that nobody really noticed until it just happened. And suddenly it was hard to even recognize the place anymore. That was a hard moment. And other things changed too. The proclamations about God softened. Wrathful became loving. Distant became intimate. Mandatory became optional. The history of your church is more a story of the determination of love to break forth than it is about tie-dye or chalices or sermon discussions or social justice committee meetings. The history of your church is the gift of potential and momentum, baggage and personality. The history of your church is a launch pad from which you spring into action or disarray. And each day your church is born. And now we light the symbol of our liberal faith. We kindle this flaming chalice to illumine the world we seek. In the search for truth, may we be just. In the search for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find peace.
Please join us in saying the affirmation of covenant, followed by the singing of the doxology in English and Spanish. The words appear on the screen. Love is the doctrine of this church, and the quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another.
Good morning, church. Good morning. Happy Sunday. Today I will be reading the book, The Bad Seed. I'm a bad seed. A bad seed. Oh, yeah, it's true. The other seeds, they look at me and they say, that seed is so bad. When they think I'm not listening, they mumble, there goes a bad seed. But I can hear them. I have good hearing for a seed. How bad am I? You really want to know? Well, I never put things back where they belong. I'm late to everything. I tell long jokes with no punchlines. I never wash my hands or my feet. I lie about pointless stuff. I cut in line every time. I stare at everybody. I glare at everybody. I finish everybody's sentences, and I never listen. And I do lots of other bad things too. Know why? Because I'm a bad seed. A bad seed. I just can't help it. Sure, I wasn't always this bad. I was born a humble seed on a simple sunflower in an unremarkable field. I had a big family, seeds everywhere. We found ways of having fun. We were close. But then the petals dropped, and our flower drooped. It's kind of a blur. I remember a bag. Everything went dark. And then, a giant. I thought I was a goner. I thought I was done for. I screamed and I hollered, ah! Poof. But I was spit out at the last possible second. I flew through the air and I landed under the bleachers with a huge thud. When I woke up, it was dark outside. A wad of gum had softened my fall. I felt okay, but something had changed in me. I'd become a different seed entirely. I'd become a bad seed. A bad seed. That's right. I stopped smiling. I kept to myself. I drifted. I was friend to nobody and bad to everybody. I was lost on purpose. I lived inside a soda can. I didn't care, and it suited me. Until recently, I made a decision. I've decided I don't want to be a bad seed anymore. I'm ready to be happy. It's hard to be good when you're so used to being bad, but I'm trying. I'm taking it one day at a time. Sure, I still forget to listen, and I still show up late, and I still talk during movies, and I do all kinds of other bad stuff. But I also say thank you, and I say please, and I smile, and I hold doors open for people, not always, but sometimes. And even though I still feel bad sometimes, I also feel kind of good. It's sort of a mix. All I can do is keep trying and keep thinking, maybe I'm not such a bad seed after all. Hey, look, there goes that bad seed. Actually, he's not all that bad anymore. I heard that. Thank you.
It's now time for our opening hymn, number 1029, Love Knocks and Waits for Us to Hear. Please rise and body your spirit. One of the ways we support one another in our beloved community is the public sharing of personal joys, sorrows, and milestones. If you have something to share this morning with those gathered here, please wait a moment until we can get the microphone to you. Please remember that this is not a time for announcements.
Hi, I'm Jenny Herrick, and I ask you to keep Jerry Natchison in your thoughts. Yesterday, he was having some issues, and he was taken to the hospital, and they did some tests, and there are going to be more. Tomorrow, there'll be another test, and so to try to determine what may be wrong. And so Jody isn't here today because she's with him.
Thank you, Jenny, for sharing that.
I just learned this morning that Paul Taylor passed away early this morning. He's a beloved resident of Mesilla and a former representative and an educator, and he's just an amazing man, lived to be, I think, 102, and keep his family in your thoughts.
Thank you, Lori.
I'm Dick Bagby. You haven't seen me around very much because last year we purchased a condominium in Cleveland. Our idea was we would be dividing our time between here and there. We learned this past week that almost all of our time is going to be spent up there from now on. So we'll miss our friends here, but it's been a good place to be.
We'll miss you and Susan.
I'm Laura. This Tuesday, they're going to replace this left hip. I am delighted and ask you to keep me in your thoughts and prayers.
And we do, Laura.
I'm Linda Rochella. Last week, we introduced ourselves as moving to Las Cruces, and I have a joy. We got an accepted offer on a house yesterday, so it's looking good. We'll just have to see.
That's wonderful news. Great. BJ?
I'm BJ Bala, and our long-term friend, Chris Ramsey, is under hospice care, and she's in nursing home now as opposed to being at home. She was moved there about 3 days ago. So keep her in our thoughts.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Tom Packard. If you were at the lunch bunch on Friday, we had a full table. And it used to be where we gathered after working Wednesday mornings at Casa de Peregrinos. But I have a joy this morning. We have a pamphlet now to hand out to people who stand on street corners asking for help. And I'm going to leave a stack of them. I'm going to put a stack of them in the lobby. And I want you to take as many as you like. And when you see somebody on the street who says in one way or another, I need help, this you can give them some concrete advice as to how to obtain that help. This is long in coming. I was on the board for almost 20 years, and this is something that we should have had 20 years ago, but that hindsight is always 20/20. So please take advantage of this.
One side English, other side Spanish. Thank you, Tom.
I told you a couple weeks ago my basset hound was not doing well, and since then she's bounced back and she's doing well, and I just wanted to let you all know that.
All right, great. Thank you, Robert. We have anyone else this morning? Oh, Charlie.
I realize some of you are interested in science and electricity. Yesterday was the anniversary of Thomas Edison's birthday. Edison didn't invent the electric light, but he did invent the phonograph and the power distribution system. So we owe him an awful lot. I thought we should honor him. Thank you.
And by the way, he was born in Ohio. Yes. Just a little side note for those of you who didn't know. But seriously, we light another candle for those joys and sorrows expressed today, as well as those we carry in our hearts. Well, let's try that again.
And may the joys and sorrows of each be the joys and sorrows of all. I invite you now to join in meditation, to breathe deeply, to take your seat firmly but gently, to let your heart soften, to turn your focus inward, as we remember that it is a great blessing to be here together. And remember that despite its trouble and travail, it remains a wonderful world. We thank you, sky, for your blue, and also breeze for what you do. Everything simple, undivided, and too ordinary to be tried as true. The sound of rain when we're warm inside, purple shadows on the mountainside. Help us to notice, open our eyes, that we might be at one and at peace when our story's told, as much a part of nature as the beauty we behold. Amen.
This morning, we are going to read together our covenant of right relations. And Mike has slides for us. We, the members and friends of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Las Cruces, endeavor to create a community of loving kindness which fosters individual and community growth and promotes the dignity and self-worth of all individuals, do affirm and covenant to interact with each other with openness, honesty, respect, patience, sensitivity, and compassion. Toward this end, we agree to listen with an open mind, seeking to understand and empathize with each other while embracing our diversity and differences. Be clear in communications, reflecting before responding, and requesting and providing clarification when needed. Remain engaged during discussions and place the well-being of the community above disagreement. Endeavor to understand the behaviors, needs, and limitations of ourselves and others. Acknowledge by the right to express opinions freely, seeking to be constructive by making sure our communications are true and expressed in a kind and helpful manner. Give and receive forgiveness and respect the confidentiality of personal information shared with us. Inform ourselves of church processes and communications and accept the responsibilities of membership in this community. By leading ourselves to this covenant, we shall build an environment of trust that promotes free and responsible discussion of ideas while cultivating an atmosphere of joy and celebration in our church community.
At Haverford College, they call these guys the Quaker Bouncers. They consist of Jeff, Phil, and Chris, who study math, philosophy, and history, respectively, when they're in class. But when they're not in class, they can usually be found cruising the parties on campus where there's often pretty heavy drinking. And Jeff got the idea when there was a girl, one of his classmates, who almost died. The kids were playing this game called 21, where you see how many shots of whiskey you can put down before you either pass out or hit the legal drinking age. And this girl was on the ground, unconscious, showing all the signs of alcohol poisoning. And everybody was just standing around looking, not knowing what to do and afraid to call 911 because that might get them into trouble. But one girl was already in very serious trouble, and that's when the bouncers were formed. These pacifist party police don't actually have any authority or power to physically break up a binge. Mostly what they try and do is to talk with their peers, talk some sense into them and keep everybody safe. And if things get too rowdy, mostly then they run away, which is where the Quaker and pacifist part comes in. But the religious dimension also stems from the school's honor code, which is very much a part of its history. Now, an honor code probably sounds a little quaint, but at this particular college, every freshman signs it. So if the guy in the next dorm is playing the music too loud at 3 a.m., what do? You don't go to the authorities. You go and talk to the guy face to face, person to person. You try to work it out. What do you do if you think somebody's cheating on an exam? Again, instead of snitching, you go right to that individual and talk about your concerns. According to the Code's preamble, if a diverse community is to prosper, its members must attempt to come to terms with their differences, and this goal is only possible if students seek mutual understanding by means of respectful communication. And the healthiest communication is almost always one-to-one, person-to-person, face-to-face. Far from being just words on paper, this honor code works so well that when the police were called to break up one wild rumpus, the underage drinkers were cited, but also the person who ratted them out was sanctioned for violating the norms of mutuality that the code required. And I like to think that there are still some places like Haverford that still exist, little pockets of good manners and decency and collegiality, subcultures where kindness still reigns. And I think there are some arenas of athletics, for example, where unwritten or written codes of conduct prevail. For instance, you tune into a tennis match, watch it on TV. There's some sportsman-like, sportswoman-like conduct taking place there. You don't hear Roger Federer trash-talking Rafa Nadal. You know, if there's a rivalry, they keep that on the court, which is where it should be. And contrast that, maybe some of you remember a few years back, Serena Williams lost her temper. She started cussing out one of the umpires who called her on a foot fault. And that was a story that made international news. You know, you just don't do those things in women's tennis. And when it does happen, it's exceptional. People take notice, and this is famously a gentleman's sport. But it seems like the very notions of gentlemanly and ladylike conduct, if I can use those terms, those have been forgotten. They're seen as increasingly outmoded, as prim and proper holdovers in an anything-goes society. So there used to be, for instance, a rule that I heard somewhere that a gentleman doesn't hit a lady. I hope you learned that somewhere along the way. I did. But this past summer, in a state Senate race in Rhode Island's District 29, the GOP candidate, who's an off-duty cop, actually punched his opponent, Jennifer Rourke, in the face during a political debate. This is a symptom of what's wrong with our public discourse. Name-calling and character assassination lead to thuggery and actual violence. Escalating rhetoric leads to inexcusable behavior, like members of Congress last month engaging in shoving matches on the floor of the House, like yelling at the president, liar, during the State of the Union, like Solomon Pena here in New Mexico, a losing candidate for the state legislature, going to the homes of his political rivals and shooting them up. We've grown accustomed to what some people call a culture of meanness. This is reflected in airways that are dominated by shock jocks, highways filled with road rage, TV reality shows that turn humiliation into popular entertainment. It's reflected in courts that are clogged with mean-spirited and frivolous lawsuits. It's reflected in ill will toward the immigrant in a shredded safety net for kids and the disabled and veterans. And some people would blame the internet for this. You know, you see these email flame wars where people say things that should never have been said and just can't be taken back. You see it in the comments section of newspapers where anonymity has turned those things just into cesspools. But blaming and finger pointing, the search for villains, for culprits who we can blame, that's not very helpful, I don't think, because the problem isn't really out there with those other people who need to be purged. The problem, I think, is less technical. It's not with the internet or social media. It's a spiritual problem, and by that I mean the problem is in here. It's with us, because the culture, it's our creation. It's not something separate from us. It's reflected in our personalities, in our neighborhoods and our schools, and even increasingly in our churches. Now, thankfully, there are some religious communities that are still islands of serenity and civility. In her memoir, Dakota, Kathleen Norris remembers a Benedictine abbey that she was part of out on the Great American Prairie. And one sister was telling her the story of how the abbey had almost split apart, had divided over the issue because some of the sisters felt strongly that they needed to go out and protest and carry signs and picket in the streets. And the older sisters didn't think this was appropriate at all, but they had a sit-down together that started with prayer. And the younger nuns explained that for them, getting out there was part of what they felt to be their religious obligation. And there was a back and forth, and some dialogue occurred. So it was finally decided that, yes, the young nuns could go protest, and others would stay at home, or they would cook or provide medical aid. And the ones who were completely vehemently opposed to it all, they would just pray for all the rest of them. And that's how it ended. But everyone had their say, everyone spoke, everyone was listened to, and the sister laughed. We still remained a community. The Benedictines represented a model of right relations compared to another church that Norris visited in a little Dakota town that seemed to be filled with passive-aggressive types. For example, one of their ministers was blistered in an anonymous letter to his denominational superiors for spending too much time working with the local cancer society, which kind of shows that some people are going to find fault no matter. A woman in a Bible study was smeared, denigrated behind her back, while the other women would just not say anything to her directly, but just smile in her face. In yet another incident, Norris records, "I heard a woman in my church outright refuse the help of another woman whose talents we could have used in presenting a musical program, and it was rare to receive such an offer of help. I thought it was a shame to reject this woman in the process," but a personality clash had apparently made it a situation where one person said, "I'm just not going to work with that woman. I don't want to have anything to do with her." This is sad when people in the same church cannot be in each other's presence, can't reconcile. I couldn't help wishing that we were in a monastery, Norris concludes, where an abbot or a prioress could command us to work with that woman. and maybe grow in our understanding of what charity required. So what accounts for the difference between the abbey, where the women remained in community, they remained sisters through thick and thin, and that church that was filled with persnickety personalities and relationships gone sour? She says it was the presence of an abbot or a prioress, but I don't think so, you know. I mean, the church had a pastor, for all the difference that made, but I conjecture it was because the Benedictines, like the students at Haverford, had a rule to follow. They had an honor code. They had a set of operating instructions for how to treat each other, just as the players on the pro tennis circuit have an official code of conduct. And it's noteworthy that our churches, our congregations, are also founded on rules of good behavior. As Unitarians, we have a covenantal model of church life. And our history stretches all the way back to the Pilgrims. Tom here grew up in that Pilgrim church in Plymouth. They came here to practice a different kind of religion than that of the Church of England. There you belonged to a church just because you were born a British subject, and over you was an archbishop, and above that a monarch. But as separatists, the Pilgrims had this different idea that churches were formed through voluntary associations. Individuals would sign a covenant, a solemn agreement to live together in charity and goodwill, and they promised patience and forgiveness. They promised to bear each other's burdens and support each other in times of trouble. And like the vows of marriage, to have and to hold, for better, for worse, most of these covenants were very short and sweet, like that original Pilgrim Covenant from 1606, which is still in use in that church in Plymouth. Tom is nodding. We were at the Chat and Chew. I said, you know, it's funny, in Plymouth, there's a meeting house there, and it has a plaque on the wall. It's the Unitarian church. It says, "We're the descendants of the original Pilgrim Scrooby congregation." And kitty corner, there's another white-clabbered congregational church with a plaque on it that says, "No, we're the original descendants of that Pilgrim congregation." Tom said, one of them got the faith and the other got the furniture, but they still haven't worked that out. But this is the covenant that they still use, a covenant just like the one we read each Sunday morning. We, as the Lord's free people, join ourselves into church estate in the fellowship of the gospel, to walk in all his ways, made known or to be known unto us according to our best endeavors, whatsoever it should cost us, the Lord assisting. And, you know, the language is kind of antique, but you can notice that it's not a creed or a theological statement of any kind. It's not a promise that everybody's going to believe alike. It doesn't say anything about the virgin birth or the Trinity. Rather, the pledges that the Pilgrims made were behavioral, to walk together in freedom, in fellowship, according to their best endeavors, even if it should cost them something, as indeed it did that first winter when half of them died. So this commitment to treat each other with mutual care and respect is still the cornerstone of our faith. Our beliefs differ. You know, we have humanists and Christians and Buddhists and atheists and none of the above. Our beliefs differ. And certainly they have evolved over the last 400 years. But like our spiritual ancestors, we continue to covenant with each other and are accountable to each other, as we say each Sunday. Love is the doctrine of this church. But what does that mean, really? To dwell together in peace, to make service our prayer, to seek truth in freedom. And I think those questions are vital, because those Pilgrim and Puritan congregations that we claim as our forerunners were, for all their shortcomings, the cradles of freedom and workshops of democracy. From the Mayflower Compact to the New England Town Meeting to the Constitution's preamble of "We the People," a direct line of dissent can be traced. Dissent in the religious realm led to independence in the political. Congregations governed by their members gave rise to a nation where ordinary citizens were supposed to be in charge. And I don't see much hope of rescuing America from its partisan divides unless we can do better in our own churches, unless we can prove that it's possible to disagree without being disagreeable, model cooperation and make room for differences of opinion, exemplify trust and tolerance, and become the kind of change we want to see in the world. Now, this is a wonderful congregation, you know. There are so many friendly, fine, good-hearted, sincere people here. It's full of uncommon decency and deep principle. And I see that in just acts of friendship and fellowship and kindness, and in the generosity of all the volunteers who are stocking the little pantry and teaching Sunday school, and fixing dinners at the detention center, and visiting the sick and homebound, and staying up late to do the work of boards and committees. But you also have to take care lest this place too, even this place, become infected with the culture of meanness. Take care lest we fall short of our own high standards. And so I would invite you, members and friends of this Unitarian Universalist Church of Las Cruces, to renew your covenant of right relations, to be like the students at Haverford College, or like the brothers and sisters in a monastery, or sportsmen-like athletes, people who subject yourselves to a shared discipline, a rule of conduct, a set of mutual commitments to ensure that, as on a well-ordered campus, people here can learn and grow and occasionally party and have fun, but make sure nobody gets hurt. That as in a championship game, this stays a field where competing ideas can be taken on their merits cleanly without acrimony. That as in a quiet hermitage, it's a place where wisdom can be discerned and forgiveness extended. That as in a congregation of the free church tradition, it remains a home for the democratic spirit, where liberty and responsibility walk together. Thanks for listening.
To share with you this morning. The gifts you make to our weekly offering or through your annual pledge represent far more than lines on a spreadsheet. Your contributions are a tangible commitment to the mission and vision of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Las Cruces. We are united. Each time you give, you renew this commitment. And as a result, your support is entwined with all that we believe and all that we do here together. This is its own special gift. Please refer to the electronic order of service or the members section of the church website to see how you can continue making your pledges online, if that is your preference. The church is continuing its support of organizations identified by the Social Justice Committee as recipients of our Change for Change program. We collect your actual change, checks that have Change for Change noted in the memo line, as well as online donations for this purpose. So please be generous as the basket is being passed and continue your Change for Change donations. This quarter's recipient of Change for Change dollars is the Action Program for Animals. Your generosity helps to support this progressive animal welfare organization seeking to improve the quality of life for companion animals in Donna Ana County and greatly reduce the number of unwanted animals impounded and euthanized at the municipal shelter. Thank you.
My apologies.
Well, let's take our single voices and join together with our closing hymn, number 300, with heart and mind. Please rise in body or spirit.
Our closing words are from Daniel Day Williams. Love does not put everything at rest. Love puts everything in motion. Love does not resolve every conflict. Love accepts conflict as the arena in which the work of love is to be done. Love does not separate the good people from the bad, bestowing endless bliss on some and torment on the others. Love seeks the reconciliation of every life that it might share with all the others. Amen.
Please join me with the words on extinguishing the flame. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.